1. The smoke was hot, thick. It burned her throat, coiled into her lungs. Osrith stumbled coughing into the building that was more flame than wood. She tried to call for the woman who was trapped, but Thyra Ragnarsdottir's name died in her throat. In her coughing fit, Osrith groped for a surface, her hand catching a table. On it, she dislodged a bowl of water, which crashed onto the wooden planks of the house floor. A whimper came up through them. Osrith gasped, more smoke filling her lungs. She groped on the floor, lying close to it. A cloth had soaked into the water, and she pulled it to her mouth, her airways clearing suddenly. A banging came from the floor where the whimper had come from. Outside, shouting. Osrith crawled along to the floor, groping with the other hand as the damp cloth filtered the intensifying smoke. Another breath and a crumble ahead as the front of the house took the flame. The heat was intense, it was like looking at 1,000 suns. A body, itself fueling the fire, caught Osrith's foot and she stumbled, before pushing it away with her hands, lowering the damp cloth from her mouth. And that's when she saw it, the trapdoor, and the whimper was coming underneath. When she thought she could stand it no longer, Osrith's hand caught a latch. Scrabbling, she pulled it open, the smoke curling and coiling around the square hole. The flame roared before her as the consumed wood crackled away. An outdraft of air shot into the house of Father Boka. Osrith plunged forward. Seizing the body of Utad's adopted sister, she pulled Thyra up through the hatch under which she had been trapped. Her head lolled back, but Osrith pulled her to her shoulder. The charred body of the dead man, whoever he was, fell in as Osrith stepped through the remains of the floorboards. Ahead of her, the door was a burning archway, the wood crackling around it making it larger and smokier. Osrith took her chance. With the might of her body she leapt to it, Thyra's tiny frame a negligible burden on her shoulder. In the street, feet running, feet pounding, voices calling, and calling. Staggering, Osrith stumbled into the street, Thyra falling beside her. The shouts were getting louder as the thatch lit up. White-hot peaks of flame stretched for the midnight blue sky. She swallowed and shouldered the woman again, pressing down a narrow passage into Allgate. No Christian would help her now, Osrith knew. But there was someone. Allah would help. She had not seen the Brituic healer for several months, not since she had paid for treatment in hack gold that Osrith had stolen from her brother, no doubt stolen from the North Cymric in the first place. Down Allgate, through the passage near Jailgate and into the slums of Micklegate. Mud-dark children slunk against the wall as Osrith's voice broke over the words "move." And now, everyone outside the law of Wessex came to Allah at one time or another. Women needing contraceptive herbs, pagans or Britons still adhering to their old religions who needed a poultice or medicine of jackdaw feathers and sacrificial blood. Or scrying to put their souls at ease. At an unknown age, black hair braided with malachite beads and jet stones marked with what looked very much like rune scratches to the trained eye, Allah had served these people right under the noses of the very Christian Wessex kings. When the Danes were at their height, she was close to being turned over for witchcraft. But there were enough people who owed her their lives in Winchester to make her invisible. Allah was leaning on the broom as Osrith strode into her shop, permitted only because the woman was discreet and knew how to keep the church away. "Help her," Osrith demanded, unfolding the copper-headed Danish woman onto the horsehair mattress. Allah raised an eye. Then, her face became a mask of concern. "I know her. She came for rune sticks 6 months ago. She is married to a Christian priest. She was very nearly burned alive at her home," Osrith snarled. "I followed her out of the king's wake. She has breathed a good deal of smoke," Osrith added. Thyra Ragnarsdottir, Allah nodded, but then alarm filled her face when Thyra screamed, the power behind it nullified by the burns on the inside of her throat. "And how much will you pay this time? For this woman, and for you?" Allah began, slyly, picking at Osrith's burned leather. But then the groan from Thyra caused her to jerk back her head. "Pull the curtain, quickly," Allah demanded, the candle smoke trailing as she pinched out the flame. Osrith did so, then stalked over to her, hands on hips. "What is the matter with her?" But Allah did not answer. Instead, she tried to get Thyra, her singed skin on her face and neck crinkling as she did so. No, she is too weak to lift. Christian, Allah shot at her. You must tilt her forward while I help her deliver. Half an hour later, and Osrith was pacing on the straw and dung-strewn alleyway. Come! Allah shouted. Osrith pulled back the curtain. Blinking, Osrith strode in. She had been banished for her Christianity. Allah would empty Thyra of her burden the pagan way, and somehow that involved Osrith not being there. A mewling came from a sun-bleached cloth. A tiny hand groped for the air. Take her, Allah panted. The effort of this little child's entry to the world sapping energy from her muscles and sinews and ligaments. Take her. The healer demanded, holding her out to Osrith. It was barely been 6 months. I took life from you, I am giving it back. Osrith looked between the baby and Thyra. She used what strength she had left to bear her, Allah added, sorrow in her voice. She looked slowly over to Thyra and lowered her eyes. Osrith looked too. So now the woman, father because pagan wife, looked at peace, nothing at all like she had been, screaming in terror at the fate that was to befall her. Take the child. Allah insisted. If you don't feed her now, she will surely die like her mother. Allah held out the bundle. There will be no charge, Osrith Lackland. I will send this good Dane on to Valhalla, you will raise her daughter. Osrith began to laugh. Take a child? A baby? She had no home, no place, nothing to offer a child. She cast her eyes on Thyra. Her parents died in a fire, Osrith murmured. My brother told me. Only he didn't know that he had. That was the day he had laughed with his men over the antics of Mus, the bishop's wife and devout carer of the poor and hungry, who sold her body in the tavern at night for the fun of it. That had been the night he had taken Mus for his own. In Allah's arms the little thing tried to cry, but its lungs, underdeveloped and weak, could only manage a sound like a loud sigh. Osrith cursed her body. Since paying for information on her back and conceiving from it, it had never been the same as it once had been. She will perish if you do not, Osrith. And then her body intervened in the impasse between mind and biology. Dampness oozed on the inside of her linen jerkin. Osrith held out her arms and took the child, knocking the buttons of her leather jacket open with one hand. The baby took it eagerly, though there was no for milk. It would have to do. Of course it would have to do. If she took the baby back to her father she would be put to a wet nurse and, within a week, suffer the same fate as her mother. Sit, Allah said kindly. Eat. Remember this, Lackland, she will want to know her mother, she is connected to her mother so strongly. Allah turned her black head back to Thyra. She will be strong, and a sorceress. But she will keep her Christianity. Allah looked back to Osrith. Like you, Osrith. A Christian who, beneath it all, believes in the gods and feels their real presence. She smiled. Osrith looked down at her new, unexpected charge, and shuddered. Is this what her baby might have been like? Hers and his? Tiny, squirming, mewling, desperate for food, for closeness? She must be baptized, Osrith declared. But, of course, it is part of who she is. But, like you, she will never forget. Osrith said nothing for, to her shame, she knew that Allah, the outlaw healer, spoke the truth. 88,888,888. Edra, Osrith said, almost to herself, when her heart had stopped hammering and the tiny baby was surviving next to her own skin, buttoned up against her chest. She sat on the bed of the shack she rented for $1 a month, an extortionate amount. For this she got the room swept clean by the landlady and food laid out in the mornings, feeling the sleeping girl snuffle in her sleep. Yes, Osrith nodded down to the sleeping infant. For that name was once dead, like the bearer, Edra Uhtred's daughter. And now, like the child, it deserved to live once more.